Elias Kane stared out of the viewport of the shuttle as it descended toward Zithera. The planet's surface stretched beneath him, a vast expanse of crystalline mountains and glowing rivers. Colors he had never seen on Earth shifted and shimmered in the sunlight. It was beautiful, but also intimidating. This was the heart of the Zitheran Empire, one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, and he was here as humanity's ambassador. Elias had spent years preparing for this moment. He had studied Zitheran history, learned their language, and trained to understand their complex social customs. Yet, as the shuttle's landing gear touched down on the gleaming landing platform, he realized that no amount of preparation could erase the nervous knot in his stomach. The shuttle doors opened with a hiss, and a pair of Zitheran attendants, tall and graceful with shimmering silver skin and elongated eyes, greeted him. They spoke in a language that sounded musical yet precise. Elias's translator device converted the words into English in real time, and he bowed respectfully. "Welcome to Zithera, Representative Kane. The Queen awaits you in the Palace of Mirrors." The Palace of Mirrors. Even the name carried weight, hinting at both the grandeur and the complexity of Zitheran politics. Elias stepped onto the platform, his boots clicking on the polished surface, and followed the attendants along a corridor that seemed to stretch endlessly. The walls glowed with soft light, reflecting in subtle patterns that made the entire passage feel alive. When they reached the throne chamber, Elias paused. The room was immense, wider than any hall he had ever seen, with a ceiling that seemed to stretch into the sky. Light refracted through crystal chandeliers, creating patterns that danced across the walls. At the far end of the room sat the alien Queen Lysera, her presence commanding and serene. She was taller than most Zitherans, her skin a deep, lustrous blue that seemed to shimmer as she moved. Her eyes, large and gold, held a depth of intelligence that made Elias feel both honored and slightly uneasy. Seated beside her, but slightly behind, was Princess Thalera, her daughter. Thalera's appearance contrasted with her mother's regal severity. She was lively, curious, and had a presence that seemed to radiate both energy and intelligence. Her eyes, like pools of amber, followed Elias the moment he entered. He felt her gaze, sharp but not hostile, and instinctively he looked away. "Representative Kane," the Queen began, her voice smooth but powerful. "Welcome to Zithera. Your arrival has been anticipated." "Your Majesty," Elias replied, bowing deeply. "It is an honor to be here on behalf of humanity. I hope to foster understanding and peace between our worlds." The Queen's gaze swept over him, and Elias felt as though she were measuring not just his words but his very thoughts. After a moment, she nodded. "Your words are appropriate, but words are not enough. Actions define character. You will have many opportunities to demonstrate both." Elias nodded, trying to hide the tension he felt. He had expected this formality, but it was still intimidating to face an alien ruler whose power could shape the destiny of entire species. Princess Thalera leaned forward slightly, her eyes bright. "Why do you avoid looking at me, human?" she asked. Her voice was curious, almost playful, but there was a seriousness beneath it. Elias froze. The question was unexpected. He had been careful not to meet her eyes too directly, not out of fear but out of respect. Zitheran customs were subtle, and showing too much attention could be interpreted as either arrogance or unwanted intimacy. He had hoped to maintain a neutral demeanor, but Thalera's directness made it impossible to remain unnoticed. I am here to observe and learn, Princess," Elias replied carefully. "I mean no disrespect." Thalera tilted her head, studying him. She seemed both amused and intrigued by his caution. Elias could feel her gaze probing, trying to understand his intentions, and he realized that his strategy of avoidance might actually make him appear more suspicious. Queen Lysera watched the exchange quietly, her expression unreadable. Elias could sense her calculating thoughts, weighing not only his words but his body language and demeanor. She was testing him, no doubt, assessing whether humanity could be trusted. The attendants led Elias to a seat at the edge of the chamber. The room was filled with Zitheran nobles, all watching silently. Some whispered among themselves, their voices melodic yet sharp, exchanging observations about the human representative. Elias knew that any mistake now could have lasting consequences. He took a deep breath and focused on his training. Patience, observation, and respect were his tools here. He needed to show the Zitherans that humans could be trusted not only as allies but as intelligent and principled beings. The Queen spoke again, her voice echoing through the chamber. "You are here during a critical time. Zithera faces challenges both within and beyond our borders. We must know that those we trust are capable of discernment, courage, and integrity." Elias nodded solemnly. "I understand, Your Majesty. Humanity seeks peaceful coexistence. I will do my best to honor that trust." Thalira's eyes met his again, and this time he held her gaze for a brief moment before looking away. He could see curiosity mixed with skepticism in her expression. He wondered what she thought of him, a human among alien royalty, trying to navigate customs he had barely begun to understand. The Queen leaned forward slightly. "We have observed your species. Humans are different. You value individual choice, but you also act collectively when needed. That combination is rare in the galaxy, yet difference alone does not prove worthiness." Elias felt a spark of pride. HFY, the concept of human excellence and adaptability, was subtly recognized here. He understood that this was a delicate opportunity. His actions and words now could shape the future relationship between Earth and Zithera. As the formal audience ended, the Queen dismissed him with a nod. "You may explore the palace and meet other members of the court. Remember, observation and discretion are your allies." The attendants guided him through the palace, corridors lined with reflective crystal panels. He passed scholars, engineers, and diplomats, all moving with purpose and grace. Some nodded to him, others simply observed. Elias realized that in this court, even a small gesture could carry significant meaning. He eventually reached a balcony overlooking the central gardens. The view was breathtaking. Bioluminescent plants glowed softly and streams of liquid crystal flowed like rivers of light. Zitheran architecture combined elegance and utility, creating a space that was both awe-inspiring and functional. And there, in the garden below, Elias saw Thalira again. She was examining a mechanical device, her hands moving with precision as she adjusted components. She looked up briefly, noticing him watching, and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod before returning to her work. Elias felt a mixture of relief and admiration. Despite the initial tension, he began to understand that Thalira's curiosity was genuine, not merely ceremonial. Yet, he reminded himself to maintain distance. Respect, he knew, was the key to earning trust in this unfamiliar and powerful court. As the sun, or what passed for it on Zithera, began to set, casting long shadows across the palace, Elias reflected on the day. He had arrived safely, presented himself to the Queen, and survived the initial scrutiny of the court. But he also understood that the true challenge had just begun. He needed to navigate the complexities of Zitheran politics, gain the trust of its people, and ensure that humanity's presence was respected. And through it all, he would need to maintain the delicate balance of showing interest without overstepping boundaries. For now, he allowed himself a brief moment of quiet. The alien sky stretched above him, filled with unfamiliar stars. Somewhere, out there, other humans were exploring the galaxy, but Elias knew that today, he was the face of his species. And in the distance, Princess Thalira's amber eyes seemed to watch him, curious and observant, hinting that the days ahead would be far more complex than he had imagined. The adventure on Zithera had only just begun. The next morning, Elias Kane awoke in the guest quarters of the Palace of Mirrors. Sunlight filtered through Zithera's translucent sky, spilled into the room in shifting patterns. He had barely slept, his mind still replaying the first day at court. The Queen had studied him so closely that it felt as if she had read every thought he tried to hide. A soft chime echoed through the room. The attendants were here to guide him to the Queen's private audience. Elias dressed quickly in the formal attire provided, a suit that shimmered faintly in the light, signaling status and respect according to Zitheran custom. Every thread and detail had meaning here, he reminded himself. As he walked through the palace corridors, Elias could hear the hum of activity. Zitharan nobles moved with precision, speaking in low, melodic tones that carried authority. Some glanced at him, some ignored him, and a few whispered. Elias knew that every motion he made was being observed, recorded in subtle ways that humans rarely noticed. He arrived at the private audience chamber, smaller than the throne hall but no less magnificent. Crystal walls reflected the soft glow of the room, making it feel alive, almost like the palace itself was listening. Queen Lysera awaited him, seated on a throne of silver and blue, her posture both relaxed and commanding. "Representative Kane," she began, her voice calm yet firm. "You have arrived at a moment of great importance. Zithara faces internal unrest, and our borders face threats from neighboring systems. It is vital that we know the character of those who claim to represent other worlds." "I understand, Your Majesty," Elias replied, bowing respectfully. "I am here to act with honesty, integrity, and to represent humanity faithfully." The Queen's gaze shifted slightly. "And yet you avoid my daughter. Why?" Elias froze for a heartbeat, though he had anticipated this question. Princess Thalira's presence was powerful even in his thoughts. He had avoided her not out of fear but because he respected her. He knew that showing undue attention could be misunderstood in Zitharan culture. But now, with the Queen pressing the issue directly, he had to respond carefully. "Your Majesty," he began, choosing his words with care, "I avoid her not out of disrespect or fear. I wish to observe and understand before forming assumptions. Princess Thalira is intelligent and perceptive. I respect her autonomy and do not wish to impose." The Queen's golden eyes narrowed, studying him. Elias felt the weight of her scrutiny. Silence stretched for a moment, broken only by the soft hum of the chamber. "Interesting," Lysera finally said. "You claim respect, yet most humans are more direct, more impulsive. Tell me, Representative Kane, what makes you different?" Elias took a deep breath. "Humanity has flaws, Your Majesty. We make mistakes, act hastily, and sometimes fail. But we also have the ability to adapt, to learn from experience, and to value principles above convenience. I believe that respect, patience, and observation are strengths in delicate situations like this." The Queen regarded him quietly. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled, a subtle, almost imperceptible movement that suggested approval. "Perhaps you are more observant than most of your kind. This quality may serve you well. Zithara values intellect and discernment. We shall see how well you apply them." Before Elias could respond, the Queen rose from her throne and gestured toward the chamber's exit. "Come. There is a matter I wish you to address." He followed her down long corridors lined with shimmering crystals. The attendants led them to a balcony overlooking the city, where a holographic map hovered above a polished platform. Points of light shifted and pulsed, indicating activity across Zithara and neighboring systems. Lysera motioned for Elias to observe. "You see here," she said, pointing at several glowing markers, "zones of unrest. Internal disputes threaten to escalate into violence, and neighboring systems test our borders. We require a solution that demonstrates diplomacy, wisdom, and balance. You, as a human representative, will offer your assessment." Elias studied the map carefully. Each marker represented not just a location but a cluster of lives, resources, and political stakes. He could feel the pressure of responsibility pressing down. This was not a simple task. It was a test of human intelligence and judgment, and perhaps a measure of whether humanity could be considered a reliable ally. "Your Majesty," Elias began, "I must first gather information. Understanding the motivations and needs of all parties involved is essential. Any decision made without this knowledge risks unintended consequences." Lysera nodded slightly. "Observation before action, a wise principle. Proceed." Over the next several hours, Elias was guided through detailed reports, holographic reconstructions, and data streams. He analyzed patterns of unrest, economic, pressures and social dynamics within Zethra and its neighboring systems. He discovered that the unrest was fueled by misunderstandings, competition for resources, and cultural differences, rather than outright malice. Elias proposed a strategy grounded in dialogue, fairness, and transparency. He suggested sending neutral representatives to mediate disputes, offering resources to stabilize struggling zones, and establishing communication channels to prevent future misunderstandings. His recommendations were not aggressive or forceful. Instead, they relied on reason, empathy, and adaptability, qualities humans often valued highly. Princess Thalira appeared at the balcony silently, observing Elias as he explained his approach to Queen Lysera. She had a notebook in her hands, her amber eyes scanning the data, yet she paid close attention to Elias's reasoning. She noticed how carefully he weighed each option, how he considered both the short-term and long-term consequences. "You think like a human strategist," she said softly, her voice almost drowned by the hum of the palace. Elias glanced at her, briefly nodding in acknowledgement without losing focus. He was careful not to appear dismissive, yet he did not want to overstep boundaries. Lysera's gaze shifted between them. "You see, Princess, humans may be impulsive, but they are capable of thoughtfulness when guided by principles." Thalira studied Elias a moment longer. She realized that his avoidance was not a weakness, nor was it disrespect. It was restraint, a deliberate choice to act with wisdom rather than emotion. She could see now that this human might be a worthy ally, someone who could represent humanity with honor. The day wore on, and Elias continued to refine his recommendations. He presented his findings to the Queen, explaining not just the actions he proposed but the reasoning behind them. Lysera listened intently, asking sharp questions, probing for weaknesses, and testing his adaptability. Elias answered with honesty, never hiding uncertainty where it existed. He admitted when data was incomplete and suggested practical ways to gather more information. His approach impressed the Queen. It was methodical, principled, and transparent. Finally, Lysera leaned back, considering him thoughtfully. "You demonstrate qualities that are rare, even among the most experienced diplomats. Observation, patience, and clarity. These are traits that serve both humans and Zitherans well. Yet one question remains. Can you maintain these principles under pressure?" Elias met her gaze steadily. "I can, Your Majesty. I believe that principles guide action even when circumstances are difficult. Compromise may be necessary, but abandoning core values is not an option." The Queen's golden eyes softened, and for the first time Elias detected a trace of approval. "Perhaps your species has more to offer than many believe. Your avoidance of my daughter is no longer a weakness in my eyes. It may, in fact, reflect the respect and restraint that we value." Thalira nodded silently, understanding now that Elias's distance was deliberate, not dismissive. She had expected impulsive attention, as most Zitherans might, but Elias had chosen careful observation. Instead, she felt a spark of respect for him, tempered with curiosity about what he might do next. As the private audience ended, Lysera stood. "You have performed well today. Observe, learn, and continue to act with wisdom. We shall see how your actions influence the future of Zithera and your people." Elias bowed deeply. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will not fail in my duties." Outside the chamber, the palace corridors seemed calmer, yet Elias could feel the undercurrent of observation from nobles, attendants, and scholars alike. Every move, every word would be noted. He had survived the Queen's scrutiny, but he knew this was only the beginning. Later, as he walked through the gardens again, he saw Princess Thalira tending to a small device, similar to the one he had seen yesterday. She looked up and smiled faintly. "You are careful, human. I can see that now." Elias nodded, smiling politely. "I try to understand before acting. It seems to me that your work requires a similar approach." Thalira's amber eyes twinkled. "Perhaps we are not so different after all." Elias felt a flicker of hope. In a world so different from his own, he had found understanding. He knew the days ahead would challenge him, but he was determined to act with honor, intelligence, and patience. Humanity had much to prove, and he would be the one to show Zithra what his people were truly capable of. The morning sun on Zithra bathed the palace in soft gold and violet light. Elias Kane woke early, the rhythm of the planet's day already flowing outside his window. He had barely slept the previous night, his mind still analyzing the events of the private audience with Queen Lysera. The Queen's challenge had been formidable, yet he had managed to navigate it with care, observation, and principles. Today, however, a different task awaited him. He had been instructed to accompany the Princess Thalira on a tour of the city. At first, Elias hesitated. His avoidance of her until now had been deliberate. But this was an official part of his introduction to Zithra, and refusal would be seen as disrespect. He arrived at the palace garden where Thalira waited. She was adjusting a small mechanical device, its components delicate and intricate. When she noticed him. She straightened and gave a slight nod. Her amber eyes were bright with curiosity, though her expression was calm. "Good morning, human," she said lightly. "Today you will see Zithra through my eyes." Elias inclined his head. "Good morning, Princess. I look forward to learning." They began their walk through the palace grounds. Elias noticed how the courtiers and attendants subtly shifted when the princess passed. Her presence carried authority, not through intimidation, but through quiet confidence. Even from a distance, her gaze was sharp, perceptive, and entirely aware of the world around her. As they moved, Thalira spoke of her people's culture, explaining the Zithran respect for knowledge, strategy, and innovation. Elias listened carefully, absorbing every detail. He realized that the princess was more than just a figurehead. She actively engaged in understanding her society, technology, and the challenges her people faced. "This device," she said, pointing to a floating construct of gears and light, "helps regulate energy distribution in the city. Small errors can cause large disruptions. I check it daily to ensure balance." Elias nodded. "Impressive. It seems you approach your responsibilities with the same care that I aim to show in diplomacy." Thalira smiled faintly. "Humans and Zitherans are not so different when it comes to responsibility. We may express it differently, but the goal is similar, understanding consequences and preventing harm." Elias felt a flicker of respect. Her observation was accurate. He had assumed differences in culture might separate them, but he now realized that shared values existed even across species. Their tour took them to the bustling market district of the capital. The streets were filled with Zitherans of all ranks, merchants displaying glowing fruits and crystalline tools, scholars moving with bundles of data, and engineers adjusting floating machines. Elias observed carefully, noting patterns of interaction, trade, and communication. A small commotion drew their attention. A group of younger Zitherans had accidentally disrupted a delivery of delicate supplies. Thalira approached calmly, gesturing for Elias to follow. She spoke to the group in gentle but firm tones, guiding them to correct the mistake without blame or punishment. Elias watched, impressed. She handled the situation not through authority alone, but through understanding and guidance. It was a subtle display of leadership, one that required emotional intelligence as much as strategic thought. "Leadership," Elias said quietly, "is not always about power. Sometimes it is about knowing when to step in and when to guide." Thalira glanced at him, eyes sharp. "You speak wisely, human. Many would have seen only the mistake and punished the children. You understand balance." Elias realized that she was testing him. Zithrans valued observation, adaptability, and discernment. By involving him in the situation, she was measuring how he responded to real-world challenges, not just theory. They continued through the city, and Elias noticed Thalira interacting with citizens with genuine care. She asked questions, listened, and responded thoughtfully. Elias began to see why she had earned the respect of the people. She was not just the queen's daughter. She was an intelligent, capable individual with her own insights and influence. At one point, a commotion arose. At the city's edge, A sudden surge in energy readings caused a small section of the market to vibrate dangerously. Elias instinctively moved forward, assessing the situation. Thalira followed, her device in hand, scanning the area. "Stay calm," she said to the crowd. "We will resolve this." Elias noted the calm authority in her voice. She acted decisively, not impulsively. Together, they analyzed the source. A malfunction in a floating energy conduit. Thalira adjusted her device and Elias assisted by coordinating the surrounding citizens to maintain safety. Within minutes, the crisis was contained. The crowd dispersed, and the market returned to normal. Elias felt a surge of respect for Thalira. She was not just a symbol, she was a leader who combined intellect, skill, and care for her people. As they walked back toward the palace, Elias spoke quietly. "I see now why you are held in such esteem. Your approach is exceptional." Thalira looked at him with a faint smile. "You see more than most humans would. That is why I am curious about you. You observe carefully and act deliberately. I can respect that." Elias hesitated, then added, "I also avoided showing attention earlier. Not out of fear, but respect. I did not want to impose or misinterpret your customs." Thalira's eyes widened slightly and she studied him for a moment. "Your restraint is unusual. Most beings either seek attention or ignore consequences. You are deliberate in your actions." Elias nodded. "Humanity has strengths you might not yet fully understand. We value principles even when it is difficult. I try to act with integrity both for myself and for those I represent." Thalira's expression softened. "Perhaps I misjudged your avoidance. It is not arrogance or fear. It is respect. That is rare." Elias felt a subtle connection forming. He understood now that avoiding her attention had not created distance but curiosity. Thalira's intelligence allowed her to interpret his restraint correctly. As they returned to the palace, they encountered Queen Lysra in one of the main halls. She observed them silently for a moment, her golden eyes sharp. "You have been with my daughter today," she said finally, her tone measured. "What have you learned?" Elias bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, I have learned that leadership requires intelligence, care, and understanding of those one serves. Princess Thalira embodies these qualities, and her approach demonstrates the strengths of Zithra itself." The queen studied him, then nodded slightly. "And have you learned anything about yourself?" Elias considered his response carefully. "I have learned that observation and patience are often more valuable than haste or impulse, that understanding others, even when they are different, is the path to trust and effective action." Lysra's expression softened, and for the first time, she allowed a small smile. "You speak wisely, human. Your words reflect the potential of your species. Perhaps you are more prepared for this court than I initially thought." Thalira glanced at Elias, her amber eyes bright. "It seems we both learn from each other," she said lightly. Elias nodded. "Indeed. Your guidance and observation have shown me much about Zithra and its people." For the rest of the day, Elias reflected on the events. The challenge had shifted from avoiding Thalira to understanding her. His previous strategy of restraint had not created distance, but respect and curiosity. He realized that humans could succeed not through dominance or power, but through intelligence, empathy, and careful observation, qualities the Zitherans valued highly. That evening, as the twin moons rose over Zithra's crystalline mountains, Elias stood on the palace balcony, gazing at the city below. The palace shimmered in the moonlight, and he felt a sense of purpose settling over him. He understood that the days ahead would require not only intellect and caution, but also trust, collaboration, and the courage to act decisively when needed. Princess. Thalira joined him quietly, observing the horizon. "You did well today," she said softly. "I can see now that your avoidance was not distance, but consideration. That is rare, human." Elias smiled faintly. "I only wish to act rightly, and to honor the opportunity you and your mother have granted me." Thalira nodded, her eyes thoughtful. Perhaps we will work together more closely in the days to come. There is much to do, and not all challenges are as simple as today's. Elias felt a spark of anticipation. He realized that the relationship between humans and Zitherans could grow stronger, based on mutual respect and understanding. He also sensed that Princess Thalira was not just a subject to observe, but a mind he could respect, learn from, and perhaps even collaborate with in the future. As the night deepened and the palace lights glimmered like stars, Elias knew that his journey on Zithera was far from over. There would be tests, challenges, and unexpected situations, but he also knew that humanity had strengths that could shine here: adaptability, intelligence, and the courage to act with integrity. And somewhere, in the quiet strength of Princess Thalira's gaze, Elias realized that understanding and respect could be even more powerful than strategy or force. The day began with a quiet tension in the Palace of Mirrors. Elias Kane awoke to the distant hum of activity, feeling the weight of anticipation in the air. Today, Queen Lysera had summoned him for a challenge unlike any he had faced before. It was not merely a test of diplomacy, but a trial of judgment, courage, and composure under pressure. When he arrived at the main hall, the Queen awaited him, standing near a glowing holographic display of Zithera and its surrounding systems. The room was vast, lined with crystals that refracted light into soft, moving patterns. Nobles and advisors gathered silently, their eyes observing him, noting his every movement. "Representative Kane," the Queen began, her voice steady. "Today, you will demonstrate not only your wisdom, but your ability to act decisively. A dispute has arisen between two neighboring systems, Valtrax and Nicera. Both claim control over a vital energy resource that lies along our shared borders." Elias studied the holographic map carefully. The Valtrax and Nicera regions glowed. In opposing colors, their borders jagged and tense. Reports indicated rising military activity, and the possibility of conflict threatened Zithera's own security. "Your task," the Queen continued, "is to propose a solution that maintains peace and stability. Your recommendation must be logical, fair, and demonstrate the values humanity can bring to interstellar diplomacy." Elias nodded. "I understand, Your Majesty. I will do my best." Thalira stepped forward, her amber eyes sharp and observant. "I will accompany you during this assessment," she said. "You will not act alone. I will offer insight into Zitheran priorities, but the final judgment rests with you." Elias acknowledged her presence. He had expected this challenge to test his intellect, but it would also test his ability to collaborate with someone of Thalira's experience and authority. He knew that missteps here could not only jeopardize his position, but also humanity's reputation with Zithera. The first part of the task involved gathering information. Thalira guided him to the communications hub, where detailed reports streamed across translucent screens. Elias analyzed troop movements, trade logs, energy output data, and historical claims. He noticed patterns that suggested the conflict stemmed less from necessity and more from miscommunication and pride. "Valtrax believes it has exclusive rights due to an old treaty," Thalira explained. "Nicera contests the interpretation. Both sides exaggerate their claims. Many conflicts in our history began this way." Elias nodded thoughtfully. "The key is not to take sides, but to mediate understanding. We must clarify intentions and find a solution that satisfies both parties without force." Thalira raised an eyebrow. "You speak carefully, human. That is wise. But words alone will not settle this. Observation and application are required." The next stage of the test required Elias and Thalira to present themselves to representatives of Valtrax and Nicera via a holographic link. The tension was palpable. Both delegations appeared, their expressions wary and guarded. Elias felt the weight of responsibility pressing down. One wrong word could ignite the conflict. He began calmly, addressing both sides. "Esteemed representatives, I understand the importance of your claims. It is clear that both Valtrax and Nicera seek security and prosperity for your people. I propose a solution that allows for shared resource management, transparent oversight, and a phased agreement to build trust. The delegations reacted with surprise. Neither had expected a human to mediate, and Elias's tone was deliberate, principled, and neutral. He continued explaining a step-by-step plan, shared technology to monitor resource extraction, an impartial committee composed of representatives from both systems and Zithra, and clear communication channels to prevent misunderstandings. Thalira supported him, providing insight into Zithran values and explaining cultural considerations that could strengthen his proposal. Together they worked seamlessly. Elias listened carefully to her input, integrating it into his reasoning without losing his own voice. One Valtrax representative challenged him sharply. "Why should we trust this arrangement? Humans are outsiders. What guarantee do we have?" Elias met the question directly. "Trust is built through transparency and fairness. My role is not to impose but to guide a solution that all parties can verify. By creating clear oversight and equal participation, we ensure accountability." The Nucera representative added, "And what if one side refuses cooperation?" "Then negotiation continues, with principles guiding the process," Elias replied, firmly. "Force achieves nothing. Understanding and mutual benefit ensure lasting stability." The discussion continued for hours. At times tensions flared and Elias had to remain calm under pressure, repeating his reasoning, clarifying misunderstandings, and addressing concerns without bias. His ability to remain composed, logical, and principled impressed Thalira, who observed closely. During a pause, Thalira spoke softly. "You are not only intelligent, human. You demonstrate patience and courage. Many would be swayed by intimidation or anger, but you rely on principles. That is rare." Elias looked at her, acknowledging her observation. "I believe principles must guide action. Impulse can destroy trust, and without trust, peace is impossible." Thalira smiled faintly, her respect for him growing. She could see that his avoidance had been deliberate, a mark of careful consideration rather than indifference. This understanding formed a subtle bond of trust between them. Finally, after hours of negotiation, a tentative agreement was reached. Both delegations agreed to Elias's plan, appreciating its fairness and the careful thought behind it. The risk of immediate conflict was diffused. Queen Lysera observed the proceedings silently, her golden eyes sharp. When the delegation signed the initial agreements, she spoke. "Representative Kane, you have demonstrated intelligence, composure, and moral clarity. You acted not through fear, not through force, but through understanding. These qualities are admirable." Elias bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only acted as I believed was right for all parties." Thalira's amber eyes glimmered with quiet admiration. "You have not only succeeded in the Queen's test," she said softly, "but you have also shown a respect for Zithra's values. That is significant," the Queen continued, addressing both Elias and Thalira. "Today you have shown the potential of collaboration. Humans are not merely outsiders. They bring unique strengths, reason, empathy, and adaptability." Representative Kane has proven that these qualities can serve the galaxy well. Elias felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Yet he also knew that this was only the beginning. Peace had been maintained for now, but the test had revealed not only his capabilities, but also the fragility of trust between civilizations. He had acted decisively and wisely, but future challenges would demand the same integrity and intelligence. After the audience, Thalira guided him back to the palace gardens. The streets below were alive with activity. Yet Elias noticed the subtle glances from citizens who had observed his calm and principled conduct during the negotiations. He realized that reputation extended beyond the court. It touched the people as well. "You performed well," Thalira said, adjusting her device as she walked beside him. "You could have failed in so many ways, but you remained composed and thoughtful. That is why I respect you." Elias felt a sense of humility. "I could not have done it without your guidance. Your insight into Zithran culture helped me navigate challenges I might not have understood alone." Thalira looked at him meaningfully. "Perhaps you are not as distant as you seem, human. You act with caution, but you also learn. That balance is rare." Elias nodded, understanding that this was more than a compliment. Thalira was recognizing his principles and approach as a strength, not a weakness. He had avoided her initially, but through observation, integrity, and collaboration, he had earned respect, both from her and from the Queen. That evening, as the twin moons rose over the crystalline mountains, Elias and Thalira stood on the palace balcony. The city below shimmered with lights and movement. Elias reflected on the day's events. The Queen's test had been difficult, but it had also revealed a truth. Humanity's greatest strengths lay not in weapons or numbers, but in intelligence, integrity, and the courage to act rightly under pressure. Thalira spoke softly. You have proven much today, human. I can see now that your avoidance was not distance but discernment. That is rare and admirable. Elias felt a flicker of warmth. I only wish to act rightly, and to honor the trust that you and your mother have given me, she nodded. Perhaps together we can achieve more than either of us could alone. But you must remember, the challenges ahead will be even greater. Observation, intelligence, and courage will be your allies. Elias looked at her, understanding, fully. He had faced a major trial, worked alongside someone extraordinary and succeeded. Yet he knew that his journey on Zithera was far from over. Greater challenges awaited, testing not only skill and intelligence but the very principles upon which he had built his actions. And in the quiet strength of Princess Thalira's gaze, Elias realized that trust, understanding, and respect could be more powerful than strategy or force. The Palace of Mirrors shimmered in the soft moonlight. Elias Kane had passed the Queen's test, but more importantly, he had begun to forge a path of mutual respect and collaboration, one that could change the relationship between humanity and Zithera forever. The Palace of Mirrors glimmered under Zithera's twin suns. Elias Kane walked through the corridors with a calm determination, feeling the weight of the days behind him. Each test, each observation, and each challenge had prepared him for this moment. The final audience with Queen Lizera was to be decisive. Today, he would answer the question that had lingered since his arrival: why he had avoided her daughter, Princess Thalira. The Queen's private chamber was quiet, serene, yet it radiated authority. Queen Lizera stood near the central platform, golden eyes fixed on him. The air felt charged with expectation, and Elias bowed deeply before speaking. Representative Kane, the Queen began, her tone measured, you have proven intellect, courage, and integrity. You have managed challenges that required both diplomacy and strength. And yet, she paused, allowing the silence to grow. You have continued to avoid my daughter. Why? Elias straightened, meeting her gaze with steady resolve. He had rehearsed this moment in countless ways, but he knew the answer could not be crafted solely from words. It needed to reflect truth, principle, and respect. Your Majesty, Elias began, his voice calm, I have avoided Princess Thalira, not out of fear or disdain, but out of respect. She is intelligent, capable, and perceptive. Any interaction carries potential consequences, both for her and for humanity. I chose restraint because I value her autonomy and her individuality. Lizera's eyes widened slightly. Her expression, usually controlled and unreadable, revealed a flicker of surprise. Elias continued, his tone measured, yet sincere. I observed her, learned from her, and recognized her strengths, but I also understood the dangers of presumptuous behavior, of acting without awareness. To approach her carelessly would be to ignore both her worth and the delicate balance between our peoples. Respect, Your Majesty, is sometimes shown best by patience and understanding rather than by direct attention. The Queen was silent, studying him intently. Elias felt the tension in the room, but he did not waver. He knew he had spoken truthfully and that truth carried weight beyond words. Thalira, standing just behind the Queen, regarded him with a thoughtful gaze. Her amber eyes reflected curiosity, intelligence, and quiet approval. She had already begun to understand what he meant. The avoidance was not rejection, but discernment. You have considered not only the present, Elias added, but the consequences of every action. You have trained your mind to act with care and your heart to respect life and dignity. That is why I have maintained distance, not out of fear, not out of arrogance, but out of principle and consideration. The queen's golden eyes narrowed slightly, then softened. Elias could see the recognition dawning. She had tested him, challenged him, and now she saw the full measure of his wisdom. Rarely, she said slowly, does a human display such foresight. Most act impulsively, guided by emotion or ambition. You act with both intelligence and integrity. You recognize that respect is more than words. It is awareness, restraint, and thoughtful action. Elias bowed once again. Your Majesty, humanity has much to learn, but we also have the capacity to act with principle. I strive to show that capacity in every decision I make. The queen turned her gaze toward Thalara, who stepped forward. Do you see now, my daughter, why he behaved as he did? Thalara considered him for a moment, then nodded slowly. Yes, I see now that his avoidance was not avoidance at all. It was observation, respect, and careful thought. That is admirable. Lysira's voice grew softer, almost reflective. Representative Kane, you have shown that intelligence, patience, and moral clarity can transcend species and culture. You have proven the value of humanity in ways that few would have imagined. Elias felt a deep sense of accomplishment, but also humility. This was not about recognition or praise. It was about forging a bridge of understanding between humans and Zytherans. Your actions, the queen continued, reflect qualities that are rare in any civilization. Clarity of thought, courage under pressure, and respect for others' autonomy. You have earned not only our respect but also our trust. Thalara stepped closer, her expression a mixture of admiration and curiosity. I believe we could learn much from each other, human. Your approach is deliberate, intelligent, and principled. It is not common to find someone who considers the consequences of both action and inaction. Elias nodded. I believe that understanding and cooperation are stronger than force. Every action has consequences, and every relationship, between individuals or species, requires careful thought and respect. The queen regarded him with a mixture of pride and astonishment. You speak wisely, Representative Kane. Your species has demonstrated resilience, intelligence, and adaptability. Perhaps it is time for Zythera to see humanity not as outsiders, but as partners. For the first time, a small smile curved her lips. Elias felt the weight of the court's scrutiny lift slightly, replaced by genuine acknowledgement. The queen's test was complete, and he had passed, not through clever manipulation or charm, but through honesty, principle, and wisdom. Thalara's amber eyes sparkled with quiet approval. You have proven that your avoidance was not distance, but discernment. That is a quality I respect, human. You think beyond yourself, beyond convenience that is rare and valuable. Elias felt a profound sense of connection. This was more than political approval. It was recognition of the human qualities he carried: thoughtfulness, adaptability, and moral courage. He realized that these traits, the essence of what humans could offer, were beginning to leave an impression on Zythera. The queen's voice broke the silence, resonant and commanding. Representative Kane, let this be clear. Your approach, your integrity, and your respect have not only protected humanity's position here, but also shown Zythera the strengths of your people. You have left a mark on this court that will not be forgotten. Elias bowed deeply. I am honored, Your Majesty. I will continue to act with the same care and respect for the good of both our peoples. Thalara smiled faintly. I look forward to what we can accomplish together. There is much to learn and many challenges ahead, but I see now that we share values, intelligence, principle, and respect. That is a strong foundation. As the audience concluded, Elias walked with Thalara and the queen through the palace corridors. The sun filtered through the crystal walls, creating patterns of light and shadow that reflected the complexity and beauty of Zytheran society. You have taught us much, the queen said, her voice warm but firm. Not through force, not through words alone, but through your actions, your observation, and your integrity. Humanity has proven itself capable of wisdom and restraint. That is something few would have expected. Elias felt a quiet pride, tempered by humility. He had acted not for recognition, but to honor the trust placed in him and to demonstrate the principles of his people. In that moment, he understood that the true measure of human strength lay not in physical power, but in intelligence, ethical courage, and the ability to respect others while acting decisively. Thalira glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "Perhaps we underestimated humans," she said softly. "Your approach is deliberate and principled. That is rare in any civilization." Elias smiled faintly. "I believe that every species has its strengths. The key is to recognize them, and to act with consideration and respect." The Queen's gaze swept over him one final time. "Remember this lesson, Representative Kane. Respect, intelligence, and moral clarity can achieve what force alone cannot. You have shown the galaxy the value of your species." As Elias left the audience chamber, he felt a sense of completion. The Queen's question had been answered, but more importantly, he had demonstrated the essence of humanity: observation, restraint, and principled action. He had earned respect not by charm or power, but by intelligence, integrity, and courage. That evening, as the twin moons rose over the crystalline mountains of Zithera, Elias stood on the palace balcony with Thalira. The city below glimmered like a field of stars, alive with movement and energy. "You have done well," Thalira said quietly. "Your approach was thoughtful, deliberate, and principled. I respect you for it." Elias nodded. "I only sought to act rightly. That is the best any of us can do." She smiled faintly. "Perhaps that is why we can learn from each other. You value principle and observation. We value intelligence and adaptability. Together, perhaps we can achieve more than either species could alone." Elias gazed at the horizon, feeling the weight and promise of the future. Humanity had begun to leave its mark on Zithera, not through conquest or dominance, but through intelligence, courage, and respect. And in the quiet strength of Princess Thalira's gaze, he realized that understanding and collaboration could be even more powerful than any weapon or strategy. The Palace of Mirrors shimmered under the moon's light, a symbol of wisdom, reflection, and opportunity. Elias Kane had completed his journey on Zithera, not as a mere visitor, but as a representative of humanity's best qualities: intelligence, moral courage, and the ability to act with respect and understanding. He had answered the Queen's question, proven his worth, and demonstrated the power of human excellence. And in doing so, he had forged a path for lasting trust and collaboration between two very different civilizations, one built not on fear, not on force, but on principle, respect, and shared vision. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's potential, and it would never be the